It's sad. So sad. It's a sad, sad situation. The guitar is looking wonderful, but the truss rod is broken in it. It looks like either the nut has been worn away or the metal has been worn away and doesn't fit in anymore. Now, that could be fixed if I took off the neck, even though there's binding on the edges, which I would hate to lose. But that can't be done, because if you look closely, there's a split on the fretboard going right up to there, and there's also a split on the fretboard going right onto there. Now, why do you think that that's going to cause the problem? Because the truss rod is pressing up against the fretboard to get, thank you Georgie girl, the truss rod is pressing up against the truss rod. Sorry, Georgie girl, you confused me there. The truss rod sits like that below the fretboard, and when it needs to have the neck straightened, it presses up against the fretboard. And what this guitar would need, it's not a very good, clever design, that you should have a bit more to it than just a fretboard, but a lot of guitars do that. But with these heavy strings, the truss rod needs to be wound up a fair amount, and that would split the fretboard right down the middle. And the more you did it, the worse it would get. So this guitar is got very high action. It looks gorgeous. If Georgie Girl's bum would get out of the way. But there's nothing we can do for it. There's nothing we can do for it unless we replace the fretboard or take out the truss rod, and there's no guarantee that I can fix the truss rod without a whole lot of hassle. And this guitar is just not worth it as far as monetary concerns is concerned, and also my time involved. I would like to do it, but if I take that neck off, I don't know what I'm going to find underneath it. So I think the best thing to do is just use this and sell it to someone and let them know it's a sort of a bass guitar for a learner, because it's very playable up there. So that is my analysis of the situation. Dr. Lennon over and out. It's back. It's all working, but we need to get to the bottom of the problem, even if it means wrecking this guitar. Going to take the neck off, going to strip the fretboard off and see what lies beneath. That's the crack going right down the whole way, and you can see it going right down the whole way. How far does it go up? Up to the 8th fret almost. No, there. Yeah, up to the 7th fret, the crack. And then it starts again. You can't see it there, but you can see the first 2 frets. Okay, people, but if you see each of the fret ends is can you see the bulge on the end of the binding the whole way down? There's a bulge. Now that would be unusual. You can see it probably there mostly. There's a lump there. I would assume that binding was perfectly flat coming out of the factory, but the wood has dried out so much over the years. The frets stay the same width, but the wood shrinks so much, and it is such a dry neck that's probably what added to the whole thing, losing the cohesion of the wood together. I don't know what kind of wood that is. I don't think it's rosewood, but you can see there the crack again. Okay, I've pulled out a little bit. Let me just try to pull in a bit more, because I wanted to see the temperature. I've set it to 157 degrees. That would be Fahrenheit. And as soon as I lift it off, it starts to heat up to that temperature. And I'm just going to use not a craft knife, just a knife that I have. And if this starts to split and crack, I'm just going to rip it off. because what I'll do then is I'll shape the whole neck differently, but I'm going to try to take it off. Taking a little bit of the wood away. Right, let me look at that. It's taking wood away. Not even sure I want to keep that binding on. I might just reduce the size of the neck down and remove the binding altogether. Somebody's texting me. I'll speak to them. Oh look. Let me just see. Look at that, look. Didn't take much to take it off. And it's still taking off bits of the wood, look at that. I'm going to run a knife down that and score that. I'm going to just see who's texting me first. Because it was only the lacquer that was holding it on, yeah. What's that noise? Neighbours next door. Yeah, the lacquer was more holding it on than anything else. So now, time to apply some heat. And the reason why I have this is just a cheap 15 or 19 quid travel iron, because it fits the width properly. It's a little bit light and it falls backwards, so I've got a little bit of weight thing made there to push it on it. If you can buy fret irons. You can buy fret irons. I'll just put a little bit of angle on, that's better. What's happening here? I can smell something happening. It's getting hot. That's it now. Right. So I'll get my tool. I'll be speeding this up because you'd be bored. Okay, I think this might be the final one, so we'll just do it very carefully because you don't want to rush the last bit in case you do something wrong and ruin all your work up to there. So just take your time and do it. You don't have to press as firm if you've put enough heat on. Right, has that done it? Ow! Right, okay. So let's have the big unveiling. It's still hot down there. Right, okay, so I have a strip of wood up in the middle. Something's gone wrong there. I think maybe I don't want it to cool, so I'll do it now. Your view may not be the best, but the glue will be still hot, so and they put a piece of wood down in there to stop the pressure going onto the fretboard completely solidly. Tell you what, I'm just going to pull it out because I put a new piece of wood in. That is not wood glue they've used, that's some sort of epoxy.
maybe they didn't have the kind of tight bond we have now, which is super, but maybe epoxy is a good one to use. I'm going to put a little bit more heat on that. It doesn't need this, because I don't like to peel away the edges. Truss rod at this end. I'll show you up close in a second. There's a smell of that stuff, right? Right, okay, something's not right there. Don't know what it is. Need a little bit more heat. Okay. Is this it? I don't know what it is there. Something's not right. Something's not right there. Doesn't look to be anything that's weirdly out of shape. The last piece is dragging it out of us. So I'll let you have a close-up look now on the other camera. Okay, there's the truss rod. This is the part that's prone to damage, but it's not damaged. The truss rod the whole way down is fine. Don't know what that was there. There's some sort of blackness there. I'll have, when I take the truss rod out, which I will be doing, I'll find that out. Now, the problem with the truss rod is not the truss rod itself, because I'll move it from the top. The problem with the truss rod is the thread. Somebody's been swinging on that too much, and the thread is gone. So when you tighten it too much, you lose it, and you can just keep turning it, even with your fingers, and nothing's happening. In a way, it's disappointing that there's not a fault with it, like that would be easier to fix, because that screw end thing is not an easy fix. See, that's fine. That's still there. Let me just see, it's still there, still solid. I don't see anything wrong with that, where that black mark was. Right. This is fine. This is just a holding up against the wood, but the problem is there, that's completely stripped. Do you know what I might be able to do? Take a bit of wood off it and bring that back, and then we'll be onto the non-stripped section. That would go on right past the bit that's stripped, and onto the threads again. Move it to there, and then you catch the threads. I'll think about that. But the other little thing I noticed is that the crack at the top has nothing to do with the truss rod. It's just a bad piece of rosewood. Now see the truss rod starting to make an effect there. Can you see that? And then you can see there it's making a real effect in there. Now that is something to do with the truss rod cracking the wood. What I can do about that, I'm not sure. I'll need to think about that. So here's my thinking, right? If I move that washer that sits against the wood, which allows the tension, if I move that wood that far up, then we'll be able to grip the bit that's not gripping, right? But this then would go further in. So the other idea I had was move the top washer down, and I could maybe move it slightly further. This is the locked part. Just move that down there, and then that nut would go on to the gripping part. If you look at the other end, that goes right in there, and once we get past the bad part, it starts to catch again. There it goes, yeah, it's starting to catch again. So if I bring it that far down, then I've got lots of play. So I think I've made my mind up to take a little bit of wood off this end. I'll need a sharp chisel to do that, but I'm going to reposition the camera. So Okay, it's worth bearing in mind that that's only part of the problem. I found a nut that fits it perfectly, just in case this is going bad on the inside, but this nut fits it perfectly, and if I'm stuck, I can then use one of these to tune it up to get, that's it there, yeah. Hopefully not, because I don't have much room around it, but that's only part of the problem. The next part of the problem is the fretboard splitting the whole way up. So we're going to need a good piece of strong wood to go in there on top of that, which will stop the bar pushing against the, like that's meant to do, which it did do, but it split it. I'll have to think about that. Okay. As I discover stuff, I show you stuff. This is the piece of wood that was there. You remember it had the black on it. But when I turned it over, I found a little piece of metal on it. And it had the wearings. In other words, it's been worn by the truss rod pressing against the metal bit. But I'm assuming they wanted that truss rod to go further down in and stay down in with a bit of bend in it, because as you can see it's prone towards bending upwards. So the little bit of metal would have kept it shaped like that, and when you tighten it, push against it, doesn't seem that efficient to me. So I'm going to do this truss rod the way I know how to do the truss rod, and not the way they've done it. But there's lots of room in there for a deeper piece of wood than that, rather than sticking a piece of metal on it. Has anybody ever seen anything like that there? I haven't seen anything like that, a piece of metal stuck on it. And only the one piece. The other bit that's black, I don't know what that was. Maybe somebody stuck a nail in it and it's gone rusty, but I like to investigate these things, but I also like to understand them a bit better. Right, I'm going to clean this all up. I'll not do that on camera. I'm going to sand it and clean it up and tidy it up. And I might do the cutting that end on camera, bring it down a bit. Okay. Well, that's them there cleaned up and sanded. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to drill a hole there, and drill a hole there. That's where I'm going to drill the hole. And that bit of tape will let me know when I've gone down as far as the manufacturer's. And I have just as much room as the manufacturer because the dots are there. So I'm not going to be exceeding it. I am going to weaken that slightly, so I'll have to make sure this is well and truly glued. So you see, I've drilled the holes, and now I'm going to use a chisel to shape out the wood that's there. That's it now. Yep, perfect. Right, now I've brought it down that far, which means that I have more room down here for the truss rod. Okay, so let me explain this to you a little bit. I have manually hand gone down the sides, not what you would call the most attractive job on the sides, but it's perfectly flat on that little shelf that I've created there, right? Now, this piece of hardwood will go in there, and that will press against the fretboard, and it'll give it more of a surface so that it doesn't crack it anymore, I hope. I'll be doing some stuff to that too to glue it as well. But this, and also I only put a piece of wood in that distance. I didn't go the whole way because I wanted the strength to still stay up there where that nut has to press against it, and I wanted the strength to stay down there where that nut has to press against it. So when it's all gone together with that little putty magnet in it, then I'll glue that down first, and then I'll put a, see, because the edges are not, let me just explain something here. I'm getting it off. Last time it was in, it was only glued on the edge of the wood, there and there. Now that meant that you only had the glue strength from the edges. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue it onto that flat shelf and the sides. Now the sides are not perfectly straight. I had to do them by hand. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue that down first of all with some tight bond with the little thing in the middle. And then I'm going to fill in there with a little bit of epoxy so that it's got a tight bond. The epoxy will hold it in place. And then I'll put that down on with tight bond. And I probably, when I'm clamping it down, will smear in some super glue, maybe even tight bond into those, and then when I clamp it down, that might just give it a bit more, that'll take that bend out of it a bit and give it a bit more strength. That's the theory. But now I've got to find a little bit of metal like that. And where the hell do I find a little bit of metal? I'd like one the same width as the bar, because it's, even though I don't like it, that little thing is going to be pressing against the bar, and if it's metal, it's going to leave a dent or something in it. So that's the way they designed it, and I can't get a truss rod to fit it. So, and this guitar is not worth a whole lot of hassle. I'm doing a lot more to this guitar than I should be. So I might even try. No, see the no. It has to have a little bit of metal there. So I'll go and search for that now. You live and learn, don't you? I found a piece of brass, and I put two pieces of it together. Right? What I did, let me just get this. What I did was I put a little drop of super glue and put the other piece of brass on it, and then thought I could adjust it. No way. The super glue sealed instantly on brass, and I couldn't move it, so I had to put it back in the vise and shape it into what I wanted. So it's amazing how quick the super glue reacted with the brass. Usually you get about a second. Not in this instance, it just completely sealed up quickly. Now what I'm going to do, and I'm not going to do it on camera, that's the center mark for the adjustable part of the neck. Yeah, I might actually just move it up a little tiny touch there. It gives me a rough guide. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to now put a little bit of wood glue down that there and down that there. I'll not do it on camera. Then I'll put the wood on, and then I'll clamp it. So I'll come back to you when I'm just about to put the wood in. Right, as you will see, I'm not so concerned about getting wood glue down and on the truss rod, because this truss rod doesn't turn. It only puts tension on, and when the tension comes up, it'll push on that. So the only thing that would do any harm is if I got too much down the sides and it jammed the truss rod on the sides. So I'm not going to be crazy fussy, but I'm not going to let it go dripping down in the inside. Right, okay, now I do this, and I don't care about getting it all over this. I'm not even going to try to put it on one side or another. Now you see I'm running out of glue. I need to order more tight bond. Money, money, money. But this piece of hardwood is also meant to strengthen the neck. so it's doing not just one job. It's meant to strengthen because I took some of the strength away by rooting out the thickness of the hardwood. But there is a hopeful plan to my madness, because the fretboard has to be considered. Right, so I need to put that down in. And that's going to stick to that, which doesn't matter. Right, okay, that's it, you going in now. But I haven't got you in the right place. You see what you get? And you're not in the right place either. You should be there more. Less rush, less haste. What is it? Who cares? Right, okay. Good, right, okay. Now one holding clamp. No holding clamps. Piece of wood. Right, okay. Now this is not the bend I'm going to put in it, because this is such a thin piece of wood. I'll be able to glue the fret on and adjust the angle of the neck when I'm putting the fretboard on. This is not at the time to adjust the angle of the neck. This is just the time to get the piece of wood glued in. Okay, and one final one, I think, there, because that's the thinnest edge. You can't have too many clamps. In actual fact, I'm going to put them all on. Because it doesn't do any harm. As long as you don't go crazy turning the knobs and squish everything. Okay. Top, although there's not much up there to hold. I got no, nothing. Right. Okay, why did you fall over? That's because of the weight. You can see I'm not overly tightening. I'm just putting it on and pressing it down. I'm not swinging on it like a monkey. Oh, okay, now give it a day, because the wood doesn't have to be, it's not going to take any force when I take it off, and the fretboard will go on the next step. Alright, bye bye. Interesting, just a little side note, you saw me putting the wood glue in the middle of this sheet of brass, and you notice what's happened. It's cleaned it up thoroughly. I presume it's the chemicals in the wood glue that's done that, because it wasn't stuck to it. Interesting. I think it's interesting. I'm boring. Now, I'm going to put this fretboard on. That's all dried up now. It's been 24 hours. I would like to give it 48, but it's going to get 24 because I want it still to be ever so flexible. That's just a tiny bit. Now there's going to have to be a lot of things happen on this at the same time. As you see, I've got to clamp gently at that end, and I'm going to put another clamp at this end with a piece of wood beneath it. As you see, I'll put a bit of foam or something underneath that, and I'm going to press both ends down at once after I put the fretboard on. So I want a slight bend on the neck that way, just a slight, ever so slight. So what I've got to do is make sure that's in the right position. Make sure it's in the right position side to side, because don't forget there was a trim on this that I took off. So then this neck is too wide for this fretboard, so it needs to be dead centered, so then I can trim it down the sides. I'm going to do away with the trim altogether. It also has to be clamped tight to it, and there's a split here, I don't know if you can see that as a split. It needs to have some glue in it too, and I don't want to overfill it so it goes into there, although the truss rod is loose. Like, I've seen it already, it's moving about and it's fine, so there's nothing any problematic there. So it all has to work together and fairly smoothly, and then when I do that, the clamps will go on to hold it. But at the same time, I have to put in a pile of glue in the crack in the hope that when I press that down, I was actually wondering if it might be worth soaking this in water for a while. I'm still at two minds about that. I'll think about that whenever we're off, because I think that has a bend in it that way that's more than what the neck needs. So if I could maybe soak it in water and then put the glue, wood glue in there, and then clamp it down tight and force that bend out of it, it might stay. I'm not sure about the wood glue because I'm not sure about the water because the water could do a lot of damage in beneath the frets. So I got a feeling it's just going to be brute force. I'm not going to put super glue in there. I'm going to use ordinary wood glue because it's actually much stronger than I believe it to be much stronger than super glue, the tight bond, whenever it's got wood to wood. So those two faces of the crack, I'll try to force it down in there first. So that's all going to have to be done in synchronization, and I'll set it all up now and you can watch it later. We can see it. It's also going to tie up my bench for 2 days when it sits like that, but that's not a problem. Right, there's no time like the present to get this done, so let's slather on some wood glue on the board and get that started. Although, again, as I say, I'm repeating myself. It doesn't need to worry too much about show through. Now, I need to put that on temporarily, right? And then I need to stuff glue in the middle, which will be messy, but we're going to scrape the board afterwards. If this works, we're going to re-screw the... Well, it will work. What am I talking about? But we're going to re-scrape the fretboard. Right, okay. And this is where the cracks are. And as I said, the theory is that I push this down in. I think I'll just use my finger to push it down in. Right, okay, so are you almost exactly where you need to be? Let me just see, no. Right, okay. I think that's just right. We've got center marks, so we're going to do clamps now. And we're going to do pretty firm clamps, as firm as these clamps will hold it without damaging the back of the neck. These are not the greatest of clamps for this, but beggars can't be choosers. Let's put the back clamps on. Right position, yeah, it's in the right position. How much pressure can I get on that? I wonder how much. I've never pushed them to the limit. Still see a little bit of show through coming through there. That's excellent. Good news. Right. So I'm running out of clamps. Oh, right, there's something I haven't considered. But Right, oh, I still can get some flexibility. So the idea now is to put a clamp on there to get a little bit of bend in the... I have to get down to it. Oh, yeah. I'll have to get down to it so I don't hit on too much, and then we'll be worse off. Right, so we're okay. Now, have I chosen one of the lousiest of the... Maybe not, because my clamps are not greatest. I really need to invest in clamps. I don't want too much of a bend on this. It'll be worse. Oh. Very difficult to see. Okay, beautiful. Lots of squeeze through, which is good. Lots of squeeze through on this side, which is good. Not going to be too fussy because the sides are going to be shaved down, and we've got a bend, a natural bend in it, upwards, which I hope is not too much. I just wonder, it just needs the slightest bend. Actually, you know something? I think I'm going to take the bend out of it altogether. Yeah, I am. I'm going to let the natural weight of the wood create the bend, and the clamps adding to that weight. And I'm going to put another clamp here and put considerable pressure on it, because I want to try to get those cracks out. So instead of, I'm letting the natural weight of the clamps and everything do their work. Lousy clamps. Right. So let's just check. I can't really check as well as I'd like to, but that's it. Natural weight. And the clamps won't let it go down too far either, because I want some natural bend in it. But if I let it sort of sit up on the thing like that there, then it might go down and down and down. Well, I'm exaggerating, but that's it at the moment. Okay, come back to you whenever this is dried. 48 hours. I'm going to have to spend money on better clamps. These are okay, these little ones are fine, but the other two red clamps fell off. Just can't tighten them. So that's it. 48 hours afterwards. Now I have to clean it. I'm going to just check the straightness now, because I couldn't get checking it 100%. So yeah, there's a little bit of a bow in the middle now, upwards, just a tiny. So next thing I could do is scrape that side, but I'm going to let it sit for another little while, and scrape this side and sand it all down and get it just to there, because I don't need to do there, but scrape it down and get it all, and then do the frets, and then stick it in the guitar and test the fret, test this to see if it's working, the truss rod. Let's hope it is. God, I'm cracking up. I just sanded this whole thing and was talking to you the whole way through it. Just getting this neck to the same size as the fretboard now, because the fretboard had binding down the edges, so the neck was slightly wider than the fretboard, so I had to sand it all down. But for some reason, again, it's so depressing. I forgot to press the button, and I was just about finished. Okay, just clean this up a bit. And it feels good. It's still rough because it was a file that did it. When I take it outside and sand it, it'll look a little bit better. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is take it outside and give it a good sand with 600, 800, 1500. Not sure if I'll go to 2000. That looks pretty good. That's 600 and 1500. So it looks pretty good. It feels smooth. I think the frets can be dressed when it's on the body. And but what I'm going to do now is probably gloss this. Yes, because it feels good enough to gloss. And I've sanded the whole neck. Yep, I sanded the whole neck. So I'm just going to gloss from there to there. And I'm not a sprayer, I keep saying. Now this guitar is a lucky little guitar. It's lucky because I had given up on it. And you saw, well, if you watch the big video, you'll find that I had given up on it because there was not much you could do. But we persevered, fixed the truss rod, narrowed the neck down, and it's all looking very good. Now what I'm going to do is use my iPhone to show you a close-up of what it is. I would say it's actually better now than it came out of the factory, because it's got a stronger neck, a properly adjustable truss rod, good knobs, a better cover on it, and the fretboard is strengthened now. So if you look at the action, it's better than the factory action coming out of it. Can still go down a bit, but I'm not going to push my luck. So have a look and see for yourself the action. And a straight neck. The truss rod just has the slightest pressure on it just to stop the neck from going down anymore. And if you remember from the start, this was falling apart. It's now crystalline looking because it's covered in gloss, and everything is working fine. So I'm very happy with it. I took away the binding on the edge and I had to narrow the neck to get the neck to work. But on the back, I'm quite happy with the gloss paint aspect of it. It came up well, and it doesn't look to be damaged. Everything's working very well with it too, so I'll just let you hear it. I'm not a bass guitar player, don't forget. And I'm not going to play anything exciting. I'm just going to play you a couple of notes. I'm just going to check the tuning again, because it will take a while for the tuning to settle in with all the things I've done to the neck. That could come up a bit. The bridge is right down to the bottom, so there's a lot of room to bring it up again. But overall I'm very pleased. Lucky little guitar. Wish I could play bass guitar, but overall knobs need to be used more. But But it's going home to its daddy now. Oh, my thumb. I'll bring those up a bit. Needs to be lifted. Okay. And there you go, it's lifted. So, okay, it's going home to daddy. Bye bye.